Her grandson yanked the glasses off her face, right in the middle of brunch. Alma Kellerman, widow and lifelong homeowner, didn't flinch. Jaime, once the baby she rocked to sleep, leaned in and whispered, "You don't need to see what's not yours." By sundown, the forged deed would be voided, the locks changed, and his eviction legally filed. She'd spent years feeding his dreams. Now she was protecting her own. And when he returned with cameras and crocodile tears, the court would answer louder than she ever needed to. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. 1 second, I was explaining the church raffle to Jaime over the clatter of silverware and lazy Sunday chatter, and the next, my world blurred into shapes and shadows. His fingers had been so quick, so cruel, like swatting a fly. I froze, stunned not just by the loss of clarity but by the sneer curling his lip as he leaned in. "You don't need to see what you don't own," he hissed, low enough that only I could hear. His breath smelled faintly of the Bloody Mary he'd ordered with brunch. For a moment the room stilled. Or maybe it was just me, locked inside the fog of my own disbelief. I blinked at him, trying to will my vision to adjust, trying to understand if this was some grotesque joke. But no. His eyes, so like his father's when mean-spiritedness got the better of him, held nothing but contempt. The brunch chatter resumed as if nothing had happened. Plates clinked, mimosas flowed, and laughter bubbled from the next table over. No one noticed. Or no one cared. I reached for my glasses, but Jaime had already set them beside his plate, as if they were just another utensil he'd decided he didn't need. I excused myself, my voice steadier than I felt. My fingers found the edge of the table, then the chair, as I made my way out, leaving my half-eaten quiche behind. I didn't look back. Couldn't. What would be the point? Upstairs, the room felt colder, emptier. I went straight for the drawer where I kept the deed, the original with Henry's signature still faintly visible beneath mine. I'd touched it so many times over the years, reassuring myself of what we'd built together, of what was mine. But the drawer was bare. Not a slip of paper, not a corner of parchment. Gone. My breath hitched. My hand hovered over the emptiness, fingers trembling. On the nightstand sat a single sticky note, the bright yellow jarring against the polished wood. The handwriting was unmistakable, Jaime's, sloppy but smug. "Don't worry, Graham." Mocking. Like he thought I should be relieved. Like he thought I should trust him. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. My eyes landed on the framed photo of Henry on the dresser. He looked so young in that picture, arms slung around my shoulders, grinning as if the world belonged to us. I'd dusted that frame every Sunday since he passed, whispered to it in my loneliest moments. Now I felt the weight of his absence like never before. I should have seen this coming, shouldn't I? I muttered to the silent room. The edges of my vision prickled hot, tears I refused to shed gathering anyway. I pressed my palms against my knees, grounding myself. I wouldn't cry. Not for Jaime. Not for this. My fingers reached for the phone before I even realized I'd decided what to do. I scrolled past the neighbors, past the church committee, past the bridge girls, and stopped at the one name that mattered now. Dell. The phone rang once, twice. I stared out the window at the garden Henry had planted for me the year we bought the house. Roses and lavender and creeping thyme, now half choked by weeds. I'd been so busy trying to be the peacekeeper, the understanding grandmother, the good sport, and this is what it earned me. Finally, Dell picked up. Her voice was sharper than usual, as if she could sense the shift already. "Alma? What's wrong?" My throat tightened, but I swallowed it down. I wasn't going to be weak. Not now. "This is bigger than I thought," I said quietly, the words tasting of steel and resolve. A pause. Then Dell's voice, steady and fierce. "Tell me everything. Now. The paper may have disappeared, but that ink still belongs to me." Dell didn't waste time. 10 minutes after I hung up, she called back with the kind of certainty that makes your back straighten. You're the sole owner, Alma. The digital deed still lists you. Jaime didn't file a thing. This was meant to scare you. Scare me. The word felt sour in my mouth. I stood in the hallway, hand pressed against the old wallpaper, right where the edge peeled just slightly. Beneath my fingers, a faint texture, like dried glue. I closed my eyes. That spot had been a splash of gold paint once, a crooked stroke Jaime made at 11 years old when we'd redone the living room. He'd begged to help, spilled half the can on the drop cloth, then painted a sun in the corner like it was his secret. "So it's never dark in here," he'd said. That version of him had vanished long before the papers did. I left my palm there for another second, not to mourn, to remember. You don't win a war if you forget how the land once felt under your feet. Downstairs, Dell paced on speakerphone. You need to gather everything. County records, tax forms, utility bills, anything that backs up your claim. Don't leave this to chance. I'm not, I said, already flipping open the worn red binder I kept under the sideboard. Receipts, statements, letters from Henry tucked in the front sleeve like prayers. My fingers moved quickly now, steady. I printed what Dell emailed me, duplicates of the title documents, tax confirmations, utility bills in my name alone. The printer whirred in the quiet house like it was breathing with me. But I didn't just tuck them in a drawer. One copy went straight into my Bible, between Psalms and Proverbs, where the binding was thickest. Another under the blackberry preserves in the pantry. Jaime never touched those. The last, I slid into the back of Henry's old leather wallet and placed it beneath the loose floorboard in our closet. He always said the best hiding places weren't hidden at all, just unremarkable. Then I sat down at my writing desk and opened the journal I hadn't touched in years. The pen felt foreign in my hand, but the words came quick. Trust returned only to truth. I underlined it once, hard enough to dent the page. Outside, the afternoon sun had gone soft. Light stretched across the carpet, golden and long, like it used to when Henry napped on the sofa. Everything looked calm, but calm is what snakes look like right before they strike. My phone buzzed. At first, I didn't look. Habit told me it was a recipe chain or the church bulletin. But then it buzzed again, a tone I hadn't set. An alert. I picked it up, and the screen lit with words that sucked the breath out of me. Search. Can I evict elderly parents without a property claim? The source? Jaime's account. I stared at it for a long second, thumb hovering over the screen. No part of me wanted to believe it. But belief had nothing to do with facts anymore. The boy who painted sunbeams on my walls was gone. I stood slowly, closing the journal, sliding it under the cushion of my reading chair. Every sound in the house seemed sharper now, the tick of the mantel clock, the soft rustle of leaves outside, the old plumbing groaning in the walls. My voice barely broke the quiet, but it felt like thunder to me. Alarmed, Alma whispers, "It's time." He came to appraise, and I served suspicion in a cup of tea. The knock came just after 3, the kind of knock that wasn't hesitant or neighborly. It was practiced, professional. I peeked through the front curtain, half expecting Jaime, full of excuses or fury. But instead, a man in a navy blazer and narrow tie stood on my porch, holding a clipboard and what looked like a leather-bound tablet case. I opened the door slowly. "Mrs. Kellerman?" he asked. "Hi, I'm Trent. I'm here for the 3:15 appointment. Your grandson Jaime scheduled an appraisal tour?" My stomach didn't drop. It twisted tight and slow like a rag being wrung dry, but my face smiled. "Oh, of course," I said, stepping back. "Come in. I just put on a pot of tea." He walked in, clipboard against his chest like a shield. Young, maybe late 20s, hair slicked too neat, voice a touch too bright. I disappeared into the kitchen, hand shaking slightly as I poured Earl Grey into my good porcelain. My mind raced while I arranged the tray. I could feel Henry's voice in my bones. "When they knock with greed, open the door with grace." Carrying the tray back, I asked him where he'd like to start. The downstairs, then bedrooms, then basement. Jaime said he wanted the full walkthrough, Trent said as he stirred his tea with one of my antique silver spoons. I sat across from him on the floral couch and tilted my head like I didn't understand. Full walkthrough? He blinked. Yes, ma'am. For the listing, there it was. The word. I see, I said, my voice soft. I pulled my phone from my cardigan and tapped discreetly beneath the hem. The camera clicked quietly as I angled it toward his badge, his company name, his face. Trent was polite, but I could tell he was reading the room now. My house didn't look like it was on the market. No signs, no staging, not a rug out of place. As we walked, he asked questions I didn't answer. Instead, I asked my own. So Jaime mentioned the deed, did he? Oh, yes, Trent said casually, running his finger down the edge of a doorframe. Said he was handling it, said his grandmother wanted to get ahead of probate. I smiled again. Did he now? Trent paused. His eyes flicked to mine, searching. Something tightened in his shoulders. I knew he'd caught the edge of it, that polite wrongness. After he left, I locked the door and leaned against it, steadying my breath. By dusk, I was at my laptop, pulling up the folder I'd made with Dell's help, every record. Scanned and labeled, I emailed it all to Grace, Jamie's ex-wife. She'd warned me once, years ago, in her shy way. Jaime likes shortcuts, Alma, even when it costs others. Back then, I'd waved it off. I wasn't waving anymore. Once the files sent, I opened the drawer by my bed and pulled out the letter from Henry I'd tucked away for hard days. The paper was soft now from all its rereads. I unfolded it slowly, as if the words might change this time. Stand as you own it, Alma. Never loan your spine to someone else's ambition. I folded it again, slipped it back into the drawer, and closed it with care. My spine was back. I could feel it rising, one vertebra at a time. The house was silent, but not still. A wind had picked up outside, rustling the trees with that whispery voice old oaks get before a storm. I stood at the window, watching the last light drain from the sky, the kind of light that hides more than it shows. And then, the front door slammed open, not a knock, not a call. A barging. Jamie's voice sliced through the hallway, sharp and furious. Jaime barges in. Why did you call her? He flashed a forged deed like a weapon, until I revealed the truth. Jaime stood in the doorway, panting like he'd run from the car, fists clenched at his sides. His eyes darted to my face, to the tea tray still sitting undisturbed, to the camera above the bookshelf. New, silent, blinking red. You called Grace? He spat, voice cracking around the edges. Why would you do that? I didn't answer. I only motioned toward the kitchen. If you're here to talk, you'll sit. But Jaime wasn't here to talk. He stormed past me, straight into the den, and dropped a thick white envelope onto the coffee table. It slid across the wood with a hiss. He stood over it like he was proud, like he expected me to be afraid. I filed everything, he said, took care of the mess you left behind. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single sheet, a printed copy of the deed, my name replaced by his, and Henry's signature oddly distorted, a smear like it had been dragged through a scanner one too many times. I looked up at him, calm. You forged it. Jamie's nostrils flared. I corrected it. You're not thinking clearly anymore, Graham. You're too stuck in your old ways. I'm helping. I stood, the paper still in my hand. You helped yourself. Behind us, the screen door creaked open again. Grace stepped into the room with the quiet precision of someone who knew exactly where she belonged now. He forged it, she said, holding up her phone. Blocked signature, mismatched file metadata. Digital trail confirms it was edited last night at 11:43 p.m. Jaime turned to her, color draining from his face. You're siding with her? Grace didn't blink. I'm siding with the law. I walked to the sideboard and opened the drawer slowly. Inside, the official documents, my name, date stamped, notarized. I handed them to Grace. She unfolded the eviction notice like she'd been waiting for this moment. Jaime Kellerman, you're required to vacate this property by Friday, she said, voice steady. Failure to comply will result in formal charges. Jaime stared at her, then at me. His bravado cracked like porcelain. You can't do this." "I already did," I said. He turned red, then pale, then a strange purple rage and panic wrestling behind his eyes. "You're old," he shouted suddenly. "You don't know what you're doing anymore. You sit here with your dusty photos and your dead husband's wallet like it means something. You're out of touch." For a moment, I felt the sting. Not from his words, but from the child I once held, now weaponizing my age like it was a disease. But I didn't bend. I simply reached for Henry's letter, still in the drawer, and laid it next to the eviction notice. Grace put a hand on Jaime's shoulder. "Time to go." He jerked away from her. Then, with the sudden clarity of someone who knew they were losing, Jaime pulled out his phone and pointed it at me. The screen lit up. He was streaming. Already live. "This is my grandmother," he said, voice catching. "She's confused. She's not well. She's trying to throw me out. Please, help me. She's losing it." Jaime live streams with tears. "Help me. She's losing it." They branded me cruel until bravery rewrote the story. By morning, the video had over 80,000 views. The thumbnail showed Jaime's face frozen mid-tear, lips quivering, a shaky caption scrawled across the bottom, "Thrown out by my own grandma." I didn't see it at first. Del did. She came by just after sunrise holding her phone like it was loaded. "It's everywhere, Alma. Twitter, Facebook, even TikTok. The comments." She didn't need to finish. Cruel, cold, dementia-suffering, bitter. Some claimed I must have beaten him. Others said I was probably being manipulated by Grace. A few were kinder, questioning, cautious, but they were the minority. I sat quietly, staring out at the rose garden Henry had once trimmed with shears and soft. Humming, the thorns this time had come from screens. Del waited, silent but present. After a while, I nodded toward my old writing desk. "Hand me the pen." I wrote slowly. Just one paragraph, one page. Not a defense. God knows those don't sway minds twisted by a few pixels and a tear. But something real, something steady. I wrote about legacy, about truth, about love that holds firm, not love that enables destruction. And then I signed it with my full name, Alma Ruth Kellerman. Del read it twice, then looked up with tears in her eyes. "You want me to post this?" "Only in the neighborhood group, the closed one, where people still know which fence I painted with Henry and who remembers when Jaime was baptized." She nodded. "I'll take care of it." The day crawled after that. I kept off the internet, cleaned baseboards, sorted old postcards. The house smelled like lemon oil and lavender, but peace was a fiction I couldn't afford to believe. Late afternoon, I stopped by the grocer, needed eggs, needed air, needed to see if I still existed in this town beyond a clickbait headline. In the checkout line, a young man in his 20s, tall, hoodie zipped to the neck, stepped behind me. His voice was sharp, but his eyes darted. "So, you're the grandma who kicked her kid out on camera?" The woman at the register froze mid-scan. The woman behind me sucked in her breath. I turned. "Grandson," I said plainly. "And I didn't kick him out. I protected my home." His eyebrows raised, skeptical. Looked different on the video. I set my eggs down gently. "Son, you ever had to choose between loving someone and enabling them? Between what's easy and what's right?" He didn't answer. "I did," I said, "and I chose the right thing, even if it hurt." Silence stretched thick around us, then he looked away, cheeks flushed, and muttered, "Guess there's more to it." The cashier scanned the rest of my items without a word, but her hand brushed mine gently as she handed over the receipt. Not forgiveness, not allegiance, but recognition. I walked out with my chin lifted and spine steady, sunlight filtering through the parking lot like a small, quiet blessing. That evening, my phone rang. It was a local reporter, Anita Velasquez. "Mrs. Kellerman," she said, "I'd like to help tell your side, but only if you want to." And I did. Not for fame, not for sympathy, but for clarity, on my terms. We scheduled something quiet, off camera, just words and a voice recorder. I was hanging up when Grace's number lit my screen next. I smiled until I heard her breathless tone. "Alma," she said, "another mortgage just popped up, against your name." Grace calls, "Another mortgage has popped up, against your name." He used my name to borrow against my home, without even asking. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone pressed tight to my ear as Grace explained the details, quietly, evenly, like she didn't want to spook me. The mortgage paperwork was filed through an online lender, one of those no-contact services. He used your name, your birth date, your property tax ID, but the account trail leads back to his email. I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. My lungs stuttered mid-breath, as if some part of me forgot how to take in air. The magnitude wasn't just legal, it was personal, violent, in the way a lie can be violent. He hadn't even asked, just assumed he could put my house on the auction block to buy himself more time, more toys, more whatever he thought life still owed him. Grace spoke again, softer now. "They halted the funds, barely. I flagged the request in time. But if I hadn't—" She didn't finish. She didn't have to. The silence after I hung up felt like drowning in cotton, everything muffled, everything tight. I went to the drawer where I kept the old photos, the ones with corners curled and smudges of thumbprint joy. There was one of Jaime, maybe 4 years old, covered in cake and smiling like the world had finally said yes to him. He was sitting on Henry's lap. Henry had that look in his eyes, half patience, half awe. I tore the photo straight down the middle. Not in rage, not even in bitterness, in clarity, in grief. And then I wept. I hadn't cried since the funeral. Not like this. Not the kind that crumples you from the inside out. Dell must have let herself in. I don't even remember the knock. I only remember her arms around me and the way she didn't say a word. Just held on. Her palm rubbed slow circles against my back while I sobbed into her scarf. "I thought I had more time to save him," I whispered. "You tried," she said. "But he set the fire. You just stopped feeding it." Later, I took what remained of the photo and slid it behind the backing of the frame, one I used to keep beside the bed. Then I locked it. With a soft click, that chapter was sealed. Still there. Just no longer on display. By twilight, I was at the kitchen table with envelopes, affidavits, and a strong black pen. My hands didn't tremble anymore. I signed my name with precision, folded each notarized form into its own packet, and slid them into the manila envelope labeled Grace, Legal. The last one I sealed with a line of tape that felt more like a blade than plastic. The post office was closed, but I left the envelope in the outgoing box anyway, raised the red flag, and stood there for a moment under the fading sky. It was nearly purple now, the in-between time where things start to reveal themselves. When I returned inside, the landline was ringing. I picked it up, expecting Grace again, or maybe Dell checking in. But the voice on the other end was deeper, official, male. "Mrs. Kellerman, this is Detective Ray Hooper with the County Fraud Division. We've received documentation from your counsel regarding identity misuse. We'd like to set up a time to collect your sworn statement." I blinked, the air thick again. "For criminal fraud," he added. "A detective calls, 'We need your sworn statement,' for criminal fraud." In that station, I wasn't pleading, I was proclaiming justice. The walls at the precinct were the same shade of beige I remembered from jury duty, numb, neutral, like they were trying not to offend anyone. But I wasn't here to be coddled. I was here to speak. Detective Hooper met me at the door himself, mid-50s, a handshake like sandpaper and eyes that didn't blink too fast. He offered water. I declined. We sat in a small square room with a recording light glowing red above the door. A tape recorder hummed low in the corner. He spoke first, tone gentle but steady. "Just walk us through what you know, Mrs. Kellerman. Don't worry about sounding technical. Just the truth." The truth. It came easier than I expected. I told them about the forged deed, the unauthorized mortgage, the stolen identification. I named names, I quoted dates, I recited loan ID numbers from memory, not because I'd rehearsed, but because I had lived it. He asked if I had documentation. I slid a full folder across the table, color-coded, stamped, signed. Grace's handiwork, my oversight. At the end, he clicked off the recorder and looked at me the way Henry used to when I balanced the checkbook to the penny. "Thank you for your clarity," he said. "And for your strength." I only nodded. No strength to waste on modesty now. When I stepped back into the sunlight, the courthouse bell was chiming the hour. 11. I exhaled. My bones didn't ache from the chair, not this time. Something inside me had been exorcised, not grief. No, that lingered, but guilt and fear, both gone now like old wallpaper peeled back to reveal the bones of a house that still stood firm. Back home, my answering machine blinked with 3 new messages, all from the same number. Jaime's lawyer, each one a little more urgent. "Please call back, Mrs. Kellerman. This is a misunderstanding we can resolve. There may be unintended consequences. Your silence could be seen as aggressive intent." Delete, delete, delete. Grace stopped by around lunchtime, arms full of folders and calm authority. "These are the exhibits for the fraud report," she said. "One for the DA, one for the detective, one for court. Everything's labeled." She laid them out in neat rows on the dining table, the same table where Jaime used to eat dinosaur nuggets and draw sharks on his napkins. "I'll drop them off," I offered. She paused, reading my face. "You sure?" I nodded. "I want to." After she left, I opened the top drawer of the hutch and pulled out Henry's old letter. The creases were so deep now they felt like scars in the paper. I reread his words slowly, letting each syllable settle like gravel beneath my shoes. "Stand as you own it." I packed the folders into a canvas bag, then walked them to the post office myself. Each step felt less like an errand and more like a march. At home, I found a bouquet of wildflowers resting on my porch swing. No card, just a note, handwritten on lined paper. "Stand strong. We see you." I didn't cry. I smiled. I was brewing a second cup of tea when the phone rang again. It was the same realtor from before, Trent, still chipper, still oblivious. "Hi, Mrs. Kellerman. I just wanted to confirm. We have a relisting scheduled for your property this afternoon. Jaime said everything's cleared up." I didn't answer right away. My heart was slow, but my hands were steady. Realtor calls. "He's relisting the house again, today." He tried selling my garden, and I stood firm on every inch. I didn't hang up on Trent. I didn't need to. I simply said, "You'll want to check the parcel boundaries, and let silence be the rest." Within the hour, the buyer had vanished. See, Jaime forgot one thing. The garden. The back lot. The little piece of land Henry and I bought 10 years after the house, deeded separately in my name alone. A cushion, he'd called it. "Land has memory," Henry said, "and it needs guardians." Grace had already filed the lot's title with the county registrar, separately flagged from the house, independently taxed, and immune from Jaime's tricks. When the buyer's agent saw the records, she backed out faster than a cat in water. No clean sale, no full property line, no deal. Jaime didn't even call this time. He just vanished from the realtor's calendar, leaving a flurry of automated cancellations in his wake. By sunset, the story had shifted again. The comments changed tone, less venom, more reflection. One blog dubbed me the quiet champion. Another posted side-by-side maps of the split property, praising my foresight. I didn't need the flattery, but I let the truth warm me. Grace's voice was fierce when she called that evening. "It's time. The full charges are filed. Forgery, identity theft, attempted mortgage fraud. I've sent the affidavits to the DA. I walked the house that night, not for protection, but possession. I touched every doorknob. I flicked every light. I ran my fingers along the windowsills where dust had settled beside old tulips and sun-faded curtains. These walls had held my laughter, my loneliness, my love. The guest room still smelled like cedar. The closet where Henry hid anniversary gifts still creaked the same. I paused there a while, letting the memories settle instead of sting. They were mine again, fully. And when the moon climbed high, I opened the silver box beneath my bed, the one with the emergency locksmith kit Dell had once joked about. I changed every lock myself: front, back, garage, side entry. New keys labeled, taped, and hidden in 3 places Jaime would never think to look. By midnight, I was hanging the family photos back on the walls. Not all of them. Some would stay boxed, tucked into albums only I'd revisit. But others returned to their rightful places: Henry's Navy portrait in the hall, our anniversary Polaroid above the mantel, the photo of Jaime at 4, not torn, not whole, but mended, taped gently from behind. I stood in the living room, looking around at the home I had re-anchored. Everything still creaked and leaned just a little like old bones, but it stood. It stood. And then, a knock. Not on the door, on the glass. I turned, heart rising into my throat. The porch was dark, but the outline of a figure pressed against the window. A man, arms lowered, no phone, no lawyer. Jaime. His voice was small, muffled through the pain. At midnight, there's a knock. Can we talk? He stood at my porch, each apology more fragile than the last. Jaime looked smaller in the moonlight. Not physically, he was still tall, still broad-shouldered like his father, but something in his posture had folded. His arms hung limp at his sides, and the swagger, the arrogance that had once filled doorways before him, was gone. I didn't open the door right away. I didn't move. I watched him through the pain, breath fogging the glass between us. He shifted his weight. Then, softly, "I'm sorry." The words barely reached me. "I know it's late. His voice cracked. I needed to say it when I meant it. I opened the door but didn't step back. The lock clicked as it turned, slow and deliberate. A boundary broken by me, not by him. Jaime didn't move forward. His eyes found mine. "You don't have to let me in. I wouldn't if I were you." I nodded slightly. He seemed to take it as permission to continue. "I didn't know how deep I'd gotten," he said. "How far I'd drifted. When Dad died, I thought I had time to figure it out. Then Grace left. And the job thing. And the credit." He stopped, clenching his jaw. "It all just kept piling. And I thought, if I can just get back here, it'll be okay." He looked around, as if seeing the porch for the first time. The swing. The wind chimes. The light Henry installed the night before Jaime was born. "I wasn't trying to destroy you," he said. "I was trying to rescue myself, but I used the wrong tools." I didn't speak. My silence stretched out long enough for the crickets to reclaim the air. "Did you ever," I said slowly, "think of my life? Of what this place means to me? Of who I was before you needed something from me?" Jaime's lips parted, but no words came. The porch light cast shadows under his eyes, making him look 10 years older, or 10 years younger. I couldn't decide. "I see you now," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Not just as Graham, as a whole person." "That's new," I said, but my voice wasn't cruel. It was worn. He nodded, shame written in the angle of his shoulders. "I'm going to try. I know you don't owe me a thing, but I'm going to try anyway. Therapy, work, whatever it is, just not this, not lying anymore." I believed him, but I didn't trust him. Those were 2 different things. I stepped forward just enough to rest my hand on the doorframe. Then start there, with truth, even if no one's clapping for it. He nodded again, this time like it hurt. Then he turned, walked back down the steps without asking to come in, without asking for anything at all. Just one long, quiet retreat into the dark. I stood at the door a moment longer, heart heavy but intact. When I closed it, the latch felt final. The house was still again. I turned off the porch light, made my way to the hallway, and switched off the lamp. The only glow left came from the entry table, where Henry's letter sat under the glass dish for keys. I reached for it just to touch. That's when I heard it. A soft rustle, not a knock. I turned to see a cream envelope slide through the mail slot, catching on the rug. I picked it up, the ink already clear in the porch light spilling through the blinds. Superior Court of County. Appearance notice. Enclosed envelope slips through the door. Court date confirmed. The judge asked, "Is she safe?" My answer echoed like an oath. The courtroom smelled of paper and varnish, clean, sterile, unnervingly calm. I'd never been in one for myself, only for jury duty, once, decades ago. This time everything was different. The weight of it landed across my shoulders like a coat I hadn't wanted to wear but would carry with dignity anyway. I stepped through the double doors with my back straight, hands clasped, wearing Henry's watch under my sleeve. Dell sat in the back row. Grace met me at the bench, folders pressed tight to her chest, face calm but alert. Jaime was already there. He didn't look at me, just stared at the table, his lawyer murmuring into his ear like it mattered. It didn't. The judge, a woman, late 50s, gray streaked clean through her bun, called the court to order with a voice like tempered iron. First came Grace's exhibits, color copies of the forged deed with mismatched signatures, side-by-sides of notarized originals, timelines of the loan filings. Her voice never shook, not once. Each statement landed like a gavel in miniature. Then the bank officer, a man with salt and pepper hair and tired eyes, confirmed the fraudulent activity. Account opened with Mrs. Kellerman's name without her knowledge. Loan documents matched a digital signature spoofed using scanned records. He looked at me once during his testimony, not with pity, with respect. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. The courtroom felt quiet, as if holding its breath. I wasn't afraid, not of them, not of Jaime, not anymore. My voice wasn't loud, but it filled the room. "This was never about money," I said. "It was about dignity, about being seen, not just as someone's grandmother, but as someone who built something, brick by brick, with memory, with love." The judge leaned forward slightly. "And are you safe now, Mrs. Kellerman?" I nodded. "Yes," I said, because I stopped waiting to be rescued. There was a pause. The judge's face softened just slightly. "Your husband's promise, stand as you own it, was in every page we reviewed. Thank you for showing us what that means." Then she ruled. All rights restored to me, all documents voided, Jaime ordered to repay damages, restitution and court costs, and most importantly, full legal protection against future claims. I didn't exhale until the gavel fell. Jaime didn't stand. He just slumped forward, face in his hands, a hollow kind of silence radiating from his chair. I didn't hate him, but I no longer pitied him either. I walked past him with Grace at my side, each step like punctuation, final, firm. Outside, the air was sharp but clean. Grace squeezed my hand as we descended the courthouse steps. "It's over," I said quietly. She hesitated, then leaned in, her voice tight. "Not quite," she whispered. "He's filed for appeal." Grace whispers, "He's filed for appeal." He pulled his appeal, but my heart couldn't unclench, yet. The envelope came by certified mail, as if it carried secrets still hot to the touch. Inside was a single sheet, no apology, no signature from Jaime, just a stamped notice from the appellate court, withdrawal filed, no further action to be taken. I read it twice, then a third time. Still, I didn't feel the relief I'd expected. Not right away. My breath didn't rush out in triumph and my shoulders didn't drop. Instead, I held the page like it was a puzzle piece that didn't fit. My body remembered too much. Every door Jaime had rattled, every signature he'd stolen, every inch of silence I'd had to reclaim. It would take more than a form to teach my nerves how to be still again. That evening, Dell came by with lemon bars and the latest issue of the neighborhood newsletter. "Just in case you missed it," she said, sliding the paper across the table with a smile that hovered between proud and mischievous. There, on page 4, "Local grandmother's legal victory inspires push for elder protection laws." The article was brief but pointed, mentioned no names but mine. It ended with a quote from someone on the council. "We'd be honored to hear Mrs. Kellerman speak at the annual forum." Dell tapped the headline. "You should do it." I shook my head instinctively. I speak best with my hands, folding laundry, writing notes, reading stories to kids who already know the ending but want the comfort anyway. Dell didn't push. She just wrapped my hand in hers and left the bars in the kitchen. The next day, Grace dropped by with her usual folders, but she was smiling in that way she did when she had an idea too wild for most people, but just right for me. "What if we start small?" she said. "Not a speech, not yet, just a fund, modest, quiet, to help folks like you, before things go sideways." I blinked. "A fund? You'd name it. Choose how it works. We'll open it through the church trust or the library, wherever you want." That night, I opened a blank document on my old desktop. The screen glared back, blue and expectant. I stared at the cursor. It blinked like a dare. Then I typed, "There are some victories you win on paper. Others you win in silence, over tea, with the locks changed and your name intact." My fingers shook. But I kept typing. By morning, the donation link was live, tucked in the newsletter's digital version with a button marked "Support Quiet Strength." I didn't check it. I wasn't ready to know if the world cared. Instead, I stood by the window, curtain drawn halfway, watching the sun slip across Henry's garden. The wind touched the lavender. A sparrow bounced along the fence like it had something to deliver and no time to waste. The house was quiet. Then, ping, a single alert on my phone. I almost didn't look, but curiosity is stubborn in old bones. One line stared back at me. "Anonymous donation received, $2,000. Ping. Anonymous $2,000 gift received." The house once stolen now felt like sanctuary. I changed the photos again. Not because they were out of order, but because I finally had the freedom to. Henry's navy portrait moved to the hallway, just above the thermostat, where it caught the morning light. My wedding picture, once hidden behind paper bills in the desk drawer, now sat on the mantel. I washed the guest linens, even though no one was coming. I aired the rooms, polished the doorknobs, turned on the radio while I dusted. Old jazz and quiet gospel floated through the hallways, and for the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel like it was bracing itself. It breathed with me. At noon, Dell and Grace arrived with a basket of egg salad sandwiches, ginger tea, and honey cake. No talk of court, no updates or documents, just stories, laughter, and 3 women with enough history between them to stretch across a continent. We ate in the sunroom, windows open to the breeze. The garden buzzed with bees, and Henry's lavender patch had doubled itself again, stubborn as ever. After lunch, Grace reached into her tote and pulled out an official letter stamped in blue. The house had been approved for historic preservation. "They called it a cultural anchor," she said, smiling. "Said it represents endurance." I placed the letter gently beside my tea. Later that week, the mail shifted. Not bills, not notices, letters, dozens of them. One from a woman in Oregon who said her son had tried the same thing. One from a librarian in Minnesota who'd read about the case and wanted to start a senior legal literacy program. One from a neighbor I hadn't spoken to in 5 years who simply wrote, "You taught me something I didn't know I needed to learn." I kept each one in an old recipe tin, where I used to store spice cards and birthday candles. One afternoon, while clipping ivy along the side fence, I spotted movement across the street. Jaime. He wasn't walking toward me. He was just walking. A canvas bag slung over his shoulder, a worn hoodie zipped to his chin. When our eyes met, he didn't flinch. I didn't smile, but I didn't harden either. I gave him a nod, small, measured, but a nod. He nodded back and kept walking. A group of kids ran past a moment later, their laughter tumbling down the sidewalk like marbles. One of them, a girl with a backpack covered in stickers, waved at me mid-stride. I waved back without thinking, hands still dusty from the ivy. The front walkway was bare now, but I'd kept a few rose shoots from Henry's last pruning. I planted them near the steps, one for each corner. Soil under my nails again. Sun on my neck. It felt like planting boundaries and blessings all at once. Just as I tamped the last bit of dirt, the phone rang inside. I wiped my hands on my apron, heart oddly calm, and answered. A bright voice on the other end. "Hello, Mrs. Kellerman. This is City Hall. We'd like to formally invite you to our annual Community Award celebration." Phone rings. City Hall, award celebration invite. They called it an award, but I felt a lifeline to everyone silenced. The invitation was printed on heavy stock, gold script pressed into cream. My name spelled correctly. No title, no qualifications, just Alma Kellerman, like that was reason enough. Dell insisted I wear the silk scarf from our trip to Asheville. Grace brought a corsage, pale pink roses that matched nothing but made everything feel ceremonial. We rode together in her car, windows cracked to the breeze, conversation warm but careful, like no one wanted to jinx the quiet. Peace we'd all earned. City Hall was lit from within. The auditorium had folding chairs dressed up with linen sashes, a podium trimmed with ivy and banners that read, "Community Resilience, Honor, Justice." My hands didn't shake as much as I expected. Midway through the ceremony, I checked my phone. One new message. "Jaime, I owe you everything." I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. Grace tucked my speech into my purse, "Just in case you decide to speak." I said nothing, only nodded and touched Henry's watch beneath my sleeve. When they called my name, the applause wasn't thunderous. It was something better, steady, sincere, like a tide rolling in, washing over years of doubt and grit. I stepped up to the podium. The spotlight was warm. I could see the front row clearly. Dell smiling through her lashes, Grace holding her breath. Beyond that, shapes blurred, people I knew, others I'd never met. But the feeling was unmistakable. Not just being seen, being understood. I took out the folded pages and placed them on the podium, but I didn't read them. "I was asked to accept this," I began, "but the truth is I already have more than I thought I would. Peace, safety, my name back." Laughter rippled, soft and knowing. But if this moment means anything, let it be for the woman still afraid to speak up, for the man too embarrassed to ask for help, for the neighbors who don't want to get involved until it's too late. Let it be a reminder that protection isn't a privilege, it's a promise. I paused, letting the words settle. I'm not a hero. I'm not a victim. I'm a woman who said no, who kept saying it, and who finally had people listening. The room was silent, the kind that holds something sacred. I stepped down. The applause rose again, bigger now, echoing off the marble. Later, during refreshments, the mayor announced the formation of the Quiet Strength Fund, a grant for seniors facing coercion, fraud, or legal intimidation, seeded by donations from the community, including one anonymous check with Alma written in the memo line. I donated my journals on the spot. They helped me. Maybe they'll help someone else. It was Grace who pointed out the ripple. "This isn't just about you anymore. It's a movement now." I nodded slowly. My story had opened a door, and now others could walk through it. We were preparing to leave when I felt it, that shift in air that precedes recognition. I turned toward the edge of the crowd. Jaime stood in the back, eyes red-rimmed, hair tucked behind his ears, hands limp at his sides. He wasn't there to speak. He was there to witness. Jaime stands with tears in the audience. He truly saw me, for the first time. The crowd was thinning, thank yous fading into elevator dings and lingering hugs. The buzz of the event was softening into memory when I felt his presence before I saw him, like a shift in barometric pressure, a quiet pause in a noisy world. Jaime stepped forward slowly, careful not to spook the moment. No camera, no script, just a man in a navy sweater that fit too loosely around the shoulders, holding a plain white envelope. He didn't reach for a hug. He didn't look away either. "I didn't know if I should come," he said. I tilted my head, the kind of gesture a mother makes when she's both tired and listening. He handed me the envelope. I wrote it down. I figured that's how you'd trust it. I slipped the card from its sleeve. Inside, "Thank you for seeing me too." My eyes stayed on the paper longer than I needed, not because I didn't believe it, because I did, and it was heavy. "I've been doing the work," he said. "Therapy, community service. I've been learning how to want less, how to listen more." I looked at him, not for answers, but for evidence. His voice was steadier. His gaze didn't dart like it used to. I'm not here to fix things, he added, just to say, I get it now. Why you said no, why you held your ground. I folded the card gently and tucked it into my purse. I held my ground, I said, so we could both stand again someday, separately. If needed, he nodded, a small tremble in the corner of his mouth. That's fair. We stood in the quiet hum of fluorescent lights and polished marble, the last few guests milling past us in polite waves. I won't waste it, he said. I hope not. There were no tears, no music swells or dramatic lines, just a pause, a look, a long exhale. And then I turned. I walked away, not fast, not defiant, just onward, steady. The applause from the far end of the hall still echoed in soft waves, but it didn't belong to me anymore. It belonged to what came next. Outside, the night air was cool and dry. Grace and Dell waited by the car, talking softly, their smiles small but sure. I glanced up at the sky, clear, wide, indifferent, and yet it felt like it was holding me. At home, I set my purse on the side table and turned off the porch light. The house exhaled around me, not empty, not haunted, just still. I moved to the mantel, where the photo of Henry watched over the room. I lit the short beeswax candle I kept beneath the frame and stood there for a moment, letting the flame cast shadows against the wall. No prayers, no words, just breathe. In, outside. Mine. At home, Alma lights a candle and closes her eyes. He stole my glasses, but he could never steal my vision. The morning light stretched long across the kitchen floor, golden and soft like a whisper. The kettle whistled just once before I lifted it off the burner. Some habits stayed sharp, no matter the years or the battles. I poured the tea, Earl Grey, just how Henry liked it, and settled into my chair by the window. The scent curled up around me, bergamot, lavender, and peace. On the mantel, framed and anchored, sat the original deed, creased at the corners but proud. Beside it, Henry's photograph caught the rising sun just right, casting a soft halo around his smile. I touched the glass once, then pulled my shawl tighter. The stack of letters on the side table had grown, not just from neighbors or distant cousins, from strangers, survivors. One from a woman in Maine who'd fought her brother over a family farm, another from a retired teacher in Ohio, thanking me for showing how to stay upright when the ground shifts. I opened one at random, drawn by the purple ink. Thank you for showing me how to fight with grace. My daughter saw me again, and I saw myself. With gratitude, Regina. I read it aloud. Not for the walls, for the air, for the house that had held the echoes of both pain and power. I didn't cry. I just folded it carefully and tucked it into the recipe tin, now repurposed as a sanctuary of words. Jaime didn't write again. He didn't show up at the door or linger across the street, and I was okay with that. Some reconciliations bloom, others rest, dormant, in the soil, waiting, or not. I stepped outside. The roses along the walkway were finally blooming, 2 soft red, 1 ivory, 1 blushing gold. Petals lay scattered across the brick path like confetti from a parade no one needed to witness. I bent to pinch a dead stem, then stood slowly, spine aligned, head high. Birdsong filtered through the trees. A lawnmower buzzed faintly in the distance. Somewhere, a child's laugh curled into the air and vanished on the breeze. I reached into my cardigan pocket and pulled out my glasses, the same ones Jaime had yanked away from me in that awful brunch moment, long repaired now, the frame soldered clean, lenses smudge-free. I slid them on slowly. The garden snapped into focus, lines sharpened, colors deepened, edges, once blurred, were clear. Not just sight, but vision, the kind that doesn't fade when your eyes close, the kind that anchors a woman even when the world tries to erase her name. I took a deep breath. I see clearly now, I said, not to anyone, not for anyone, just because it was true. And the light, gentle and warm, carried it across the roses, down the porch steps, and into a day entirely mine. Fade on Alma adjusting her glasses, vision, dignity, spirit unbroken.